He was just a struggling mechanic, trying to make it through another brutal winter until he heard faint cries echoing through the blizzard and discovered two small figures huddled behind his workshop, nearly frozen to death. That moment changed everything. What happened next? No one could have predicted. Not the mysterious woman who would arrive days later in tears, not the shocking family secret that would unravel, and certainly not the convoy of black luxury vehicles that would roll into their small mountain town, bringing with them a truth so extraordinary it would transform not just 3 lives, but an entire community. This is a story about courage, unexpected family, and the kind of miracle that happens when one person's kindness creates ripples that reach farther than anyone could imagine. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The wind howled through the gaps in the old garage doors like a wounded animal, carrying with it the bitter promise of another harsh January night in Cedar Falls. Thomas Wright pulled his worn flannel shirt tighter around his shoulders as he worked beneath the hood of a rusted pickup truck, the only light coming from a flickering, fluorescent bulb that had been threatening to give out for weeks. At 38, Thomas had the weathered hands of a man who'd been fixing things his entire adult life, first in his father's shop, then in his own small garage that barely kept the lights on. His dark hair, streaked with premature gray, stuck out at odd angles from running his hands through it countless times throughout the day. The worry lines around his eyes had deepened over the past 2 years, etched there by sleepless nights and mounting bills. The garage, Wright's Auto Repair, sat on the outskirts of Cedar Falls, a mountain town of barely 3,000 souls, nestled in a valley between snow-capped peaks. It wasn't much to look at, a corrugated metal building with faded paint and a gravel lot dotted with the skeletal remains of vehicles that their owners had long since abandoned. But it was his, bought with every penny he'd saved, and a loan that still haunted his dreams. Thomas wiped his hands on an oil-stained rag and glanced at the small space heater humming weakly in the corner. The heating bill alone was killing him this winter. The temperature had dropped to 15 below zero for the past week, and the old building leaked heat like a sieve. He'd already had to choose between keeping the garage warm and keeping his small apartment above it livable. The garage won. He couldn't work on cars with frozen fingers. His daughter Sarah, 16 and stubborn as her mother had been, was upstairs doing homework at the kitchen table, probably wearing 3 sweaters, because he couldn't afford to heat both spaces properly. She never complained, not once, but Thomas saw how she pulled her sleeves down to cover her hands when she wrote, how she wore thick socks to bed, how she'd taken to drinking endless cups of hot tea just to stay warm. The truck he was working on belonged to Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow who paid him in casseroles and promises that she'd settle up when her Social Security check came in. Thomas didn't have the heart to turn her away, even though his own bank account showed a balance that made his stomach clench with anxiety. The mortgage payment was due in 12 days, and he was still short by nearly $800. He'd already called every customer who owed him money, had taken on side jobs, shoveling driveways and fixing broken furnaces, had even swallowed his pride and applied for a second job at the lumber mill on the other side of town. But winter in Cedar Falls was unforgiving to small businesses. People held onto their money, made do with repairs they'd normally pay professionals to handle, and put off anything that wasn't absolutely essential. Thomas straightened up, his back, protesting after hours bent over engines. Through the grimy window, he could see snow falling in thick, heavy flakes, the kind that promised to dump another 6 inches by morning. The weather report had been calling for a massive storm system to move through the area, bringing with it the kind of cold that made pipes burst and cars refused to start. He was just about to call it a night when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the winter wind or the settling of old metal. A voice, high-pitched and desperate, cutting through the storm like a knife. Thomas froze, listening. There it was again, fainter this time, but unmistakably human. Someone was outside in this weather. He grabbed his heavy coat from the hook by the door and stepped out into the blizzard. The wind hit him like a physical blow, driving snow into his face and making his eyes water. The voice seemed to be coming from behind the garage, near the pile of old tires and scrap metal he'd been meaning to haul away for months. "Hello?" he called out, his voice nearly lost in the howling wind. "Is someone there?" The response was immediate, a crying sound, desperate and afraid. Thomas fumbled for the flashlight on his keychain and followed the sound, his boots crunching through snow that was already ankle-deep. What he found made his heart stop. Two small figures were huddled together behind an old oil drum, pressed against the back wall of his garage. Even in the dim light of his flashlight, he could see they were boys, maybe 5 or 6 years old, wearing nothing but thin jackets and sneakers that were completely inadequate for the weather. Their lips were blue, their small bodies shaking violently, and their dark hair was crusted with ice. "Oh my God," Thomas breathed, immediately shrugging out of his coat. Hey, it's okay. I'm here to help." The boys looked up at him with huge, frightened eyes. They were clearly twins, identical except for a small scar on one boy's forehead. They clung to each other desperately, too cold and scared to speak. Thomas wrapped his coat around both of them, feeling how dangerously cold their small bodies were. They couldn't have been out here long, or they'd already be gone. But even a few minutes in this weather could be fatal for anyone, let alone 2 little boys. "Can you walk?" he asked gently. "We need to get you inside right now." One of the boys, the one without the scar, nodded weakly. Thomas scooped them both up, one in each arm, and half ran back to the garage. His heart was pounding not just from exertion, but from the terrifying realization of what could have happened if he hadn't heard them. Inside the garage, he quickly moved them closer to the space heater and began rubbing their hands and feet, trying to restore circulation. Their fingers were white with cold, their breathing shallow and rapid. "What are your names?" Thomas asked as he worked. "Where are your parents?" The boy with the scar looked up at him with solemn eyes that seemed far too old for his face. "I'm Noah," he whispered through chattering teeth. "This is Owen. We got lost." "Lost from where?" Thomas asked, continuing to warm their hands. "Where do you live?" Owen, the smaller twin, began to cry again. "We don't know," he said. "Mama told us to run. She said to run and don't stop and don't look back." Thomas felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. These boys hadn't simply wandered away from their home. They'd been running from something. "Okay," he said softly, reaching for an old blanket from the corner. "Okay, you're safe now. Let's get you warmed up, and then we'll figure out what to do." As he wrapped the blanket around the shivering twins, Thomas had no idea that this moment, this simple act of human kindness, would set in motion events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about family, sacrifice, and the extraordinary lengths people would go to protect the ones they loved. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside the small garage, 3 lives were about to become intertwined in ways none of them could have imagined. Thomas had seen frostbite before, working on cars in mountain winters taught you to recognize the warning signs. But seeing it on 2 little boys who couldn't be older than 5 made his stomach drop like a stone. Their fingers were waxy white at the tips, and when he gently pressed on their fingernails, the blood return was dangerously slow. "We need to get you to a hospital," he said, reaching for his phone. But as he dialed, Owen grabbed his wrist with a grip surprisingly strong for such a small hand. "No," the boy whispered urgently. "Mama said no hospitals. She said they would find us." Thomas paused, his finger hovering over the call button. "Who would find you?" Noah, the twin with the scar, looked at his brother with a warning expression that seemed far too mature for a 5-year-old. "We're not supposed to tell," he said quietly. The mechanic knelt down to their eye level, his voice gentle but firm. "Boys, you could lose your fingers if we don't get you medical attention. Can you tell me anything about why your mama said no hospitals?" Owen's lower lip trembled. "The bad men were coming. Mama was crying, and she said we had to run far away and hide until she could come get us." "What bad men?" Thomas asked. But both boys just shook their heads, clearly too frightened to say more. Thomas made a decision that would change everything. Instead of calling 911, he called his friend, Dr. Ashley Green, who ran a small clinic on Main Street. Ashley had grown up in Cedar Falls, understood the mountain people's distrust of big institutions, and had a reputation for discretion. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Ashley, it's Thomas Wright. I need a huge favor, and I need you to ask no questions. 20 minutes later, Dr. Green was knocking on the garage door, her medical bag in hand and snow coating her dark hair. She was a woman in her early 40s who'd returned to Cedar Falls after finishing her residency in Denver, choosing small-town medicine over the lucrative city practices her classmates had pursued. "Thomas, what in the world?" she began, then stopped short when she saw the twins huddled under blankets near the space heater. "I found them outside about an hour ago," Thomas explained quickly. "They're hypothermic, possibly frostbitten, and they're scared of hospitals. I didn't know who else to call." Dr. Green immediately went into professional mode, kneeling beside the boys and introducing herself in a warm, non-threatening voice. She examined their hands and feet with practiced efficiency, all while chatting with them about their favorite in colors and whether they liked snow. "You're very lucky," she told Thomas quietly as she worked. "Another hour out there and we'd be looking at amputations, if not worse." She turned back to the boys. "Noah and Owen, right? I'm going to give you some medicine to help warm you up from the inside, and then we're going to wrap your hands and feet in special blankets." As she treated them, Thomas called upstairs to his daughter. "Sarah, can you come down here for a minute?" Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs that led to their apartment, her homework in hand. At 16, she had her mother's warm brown eyes and her father's stubborn chin. When she saw the scene below, her expression immediately shifted to concern. "Dad, what's going on?" "Sarah, meet Noah and Owen. They got caught in the storm. Can you go make some hot chocolate? The real kind, with the marshmallows." Sarah didn't ask questions. She'd inherited her father's instinct to help first and worry about details later. Within minutes, she was back with 2 steaming mugs and a plate of cookies, settling cross-legged on the garage floor to talk with the boys, while Dr. Green finished her examination. "Their core temperature is back up," Dr. Green reported to Thomas. "The frostbite is superficial, painful, but no permanent damage. But Thomas, these boys haven't just been out in the cold for an hour. Look at their clothes, their general condition. They've been living rough for days, maybe longer." Thomas studied the twins more carefully. Now that they were warming up and relaxing slightly, he could see what the doctor meant. Their clothes were dirty and worn, their hair unwashed, and there was a hollow look around their eyes that spoke of hunger and exhaustion that went beyond one cold night. "Boys," he said gently, "when did you last eat a real meal?" The twins exchanged that same cautious look. "Yesterday," Noah said uncertainly. "We found some crackers in a gas station." "A gas station?" Dr. Green raised her eyebrows. "How far have you two been walking?" "Mama drove us to the big road," Owen said, apparently deciding these adults were safe enough to trust with some information. "Then the car stopped working and she said we had to walk. She said to follow the road until we found a safe place." Thomas felt his heart clench. These boys had been walking along mountain roads in January, probably for miles, until they'd somehow ended up behind his garage. The fact that they'd survived was nothing short of miraculous. "Dr. Green," he said quietly, "what do I need to do for them tonight?" She packed up her medical bag, her expression thoughtful. "Medically? Keep them warm, keep fluids in them, watch for signs of infection in the frostbite. But Thomas, you need to call social services. These boys need—" "No." Both twins spoke at once, their voices sharp with panic. Owen started crying again. "Please, don't call them. Mama said the social people would separate us. She said they'd put us in different houses and we'd never see each other again." Thomas looked at Dr. Green, then at Sarah, who was gently rubbing Owen's back. His daughter met his eyes and gave the slightest nod, the same expression she'd worn when she'd asked if they could keep the stray cat that had shown up last spring. "One night," Thomas said finally. "Dr. Green, can you give me one night to figure this out? To maybe find their mother?" Dr. Green hesitated, clearly torn between her medical obligations and her understanding of the situation. "Thomas, if anyone finds out I didn't report this, no one will find out. You came here as a friend, helping another friend. That's all." She studied his face for a long moment, then sighed. "One night. But if you don't make progress finding their family by tomorrow, we have to involve the authorities. It's not just about the law. These boys need stability, proper care, a system that can help them." After Dr. Green left, Thomas found himself looking at two small boys who were now warm, fed, and cautiously exploring his garage with the curiosity natural to their age. Sarah had found some of her old books and was reading to them, her voice soft and soothing. Thomas Wright had always been a man who fixed things, engines, heaters, broken appliances. But as he watched Noah and Owen slowly beginning to trust that they were safe, he realized he was facing the biggest repair job of his life. These boys weren't just lost. They were running from something that had scared them and their mother enough to risk everything in a mountain winter. Whatever they were running from, Thomas had a sinking feeling it was going to come looking for them. And when it did, he was going to have to decide how far he was willing to go to protect two little boys who had already stolen his heart. Thomas barely slept that night. He'd made a makeshift bed on the garage floor using old blankets and sleeping bags, positioning himself between the twins and the door. Every sound, the wind rattling the building, snow sliding off the roof, the old furnace kicking on, had him instantly alert, listening for anything that didn't belong. The boys had finally fallen asleep around midnight, exhausted from their ordeal. They slept curled together like puppies, Owen's arm thrown protectively over Noah's shoulder, even in unconsciousness. Thomas had sat watching them, trying to piece together their story and figure out what he should do come morning. Around 4 a.m., Owen woke up crying from what was clearly a nightmare. "The car," he whimpered. "The car with the dark windows. They were following us." Thomas gently shook Noah awake and moved both boys upstairs to the kitchen, away from the cold garage. Sarah appeared in her pajamas, drawn by the sound of crying, and without a word began making hot chocolate while Thomas comforted the frightened twins. "Can you tell me about the car?" Thomas asked softly, wrapping a blanket around Owen's shoulders. Noah looked at his brother, then back at Thomas with those two old eyes. "It had really dark windows so you couldn't see inside. Mama saw it following us for 3 days. She kept taking different roads, but it was always there." "That's when she started crying," Owen added quietly. "She kept looking in the mirror and crying." Sarah set down mugs of hot chocolate and sat across from the boys. "What kind of car was it? Big, small?" "Big," Noah said immediately. "Black and shiny, like the cars important people ride in on TV." Thomas felt ice settle in his stomach. A high-end vehicle with tinted windows, following a woman and 2 small boys for days across mountain roads. This wasn't some custody dispute or family drama. This was something much more serious. "Boys," he said carefully, "what's your mama's name?" Her full name. The twins exchanged that cautious look again. Finally, Noah whispered, Elizabeth Thompson. But she said if anyone asked, we should say we don't remember. Thomas excused himself and went to his computer in the corner of the kitchen. A quick search for Elizabeth Thompson missing brought up nothing recent in Colorado. He tried Elizabeth Thompson, Cedar Falls, and then Thompson Family, Colorado. Still nothing, but when he searched Elizabeth Thompson, Denver, his blood ran cold. The first result was a news article from the Denver Post, dated just 4 days ago. Local accountant disappeared after reporting financial irregularities to FBI. The article included a photo of a dark-haired woman in her early 30s with kind eyes and a nervous smile. Thomas's hands trembled as he read, Elizabeth Thompson, 32, an accountant for Pinnacle Financial Management, disappeared from her Denver apartment Tuesday evening after reportedly providing evidence to federal investigators regarding alleged money laundering operations. Thompson's employer, Pinnacle Financial, is currently under federal investigation for potential connections to organized crime activities. Thompson's vehicle was found abandoned on Highway 285 near Fairplay, with signs of a struggle. Her twin sons, Noah and Owen Thompson, age 5, are also missing. Anyone with information should contact the FBI immediately. Thomas stared at the screen, his mind racing. Elizabeth Thompson hadn't been running from an abusive ex-husband or a custody battle. She'd been running from organized crime figures who wanted to silence her before she could testify about money laundering operations. And now, her 5-year-old sons were sitting in his kitchen, drinking hot chocolate, completely unaware that some of the most dangerous people in Colorado were probably looking for them. Dad, Sarah's voice was quiet, concerned. You look like you've seen a ghost. Thomas closed the laptop and returned to the kitchen table. The boys were coloring on some paper Sarah had found, finally looking like the young kids they actually were, instead of the frightened refugees they'd become. He made a decision that would change all their lives. Boys, he said, sitting down beside them, I need to tell you something about your mama. Over the next 20 minutes, Thomas gently explained what he'd found, using simple terms and reassuring them constantly that they were safe. The boys listened with the heartbreaking composure of youngsters who'd already seen too much of the world's cruelty. Is Mama okay? Owen asked, his lower lip trembling. I don't know, Thomas answered honestly, but I promise you this, we're going to do everything we can to find her and keep you safe until we do. Noah looked up at him with eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. You're not going to give us to the bad men? Never, Thomas said with a conviction that surprised him with its intensity. I will never let anyone hurt you. Do you understand me? The decision crystallized. In that moment, Thomas Wright, struggling mechanic barely able to keep his own life together, was going to take on organized crime figures to protect 2 little boys he'd known for less than 24 hours. He thought about his bank account, his mortgage payment, due in 11 days, the precarious balance of his small business. He thought about the risks he was taking, harboring potential witnesses in a federal investigation, interfering with what was probably an ongoing FBI case, putting his own daughter in potential danger. None of it mattered. Sarah, he said, turning to his daughter. Pack a bag, we're taking a little trip. Sarah raised her eyebrows but didn't question him. She'd learned to trust her father's judgment, even when it led them into complicated situations. Where are we going? Noah asked. Thomas was already moving, pulling out his phone to make the call that would officially make him part of this dangerous game. We're going to find someone who can help us locate your mama, and then we're going to bring her home. He dialed the number for the FBI field office in Denver. Thomas Wright crossed a line from which there would be no return. He was no longer just a good Samaritan who'd helped 2 lost boys. He was now officially harboring federal witnesses and inserting himself into an organized crime investigation. But as he looked at Noah and Owen, who were watching him with the first genuine hope he'd seen in their eyes, Thomas knew he'd made the only choice his conscience would allow. These boys had been through enough. They deserved someone who would fight for them, someone who wouldn't give up when things got dangerous, even if that someone was just a broke mechanic from a small mountain town who'd never fought anything more dangerous than a stubborn carburetor in his entire life. The FBI field office in Denver was nothing like what Thomas had expected. Instead of the sterile, intimidating environment he'd imagined from movies, he found himself sitting in a cramped conference room with chipped paint and fluorescent lights that flickered intermittently. Across from him sat Special Agent Jennifer Collins, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Mr. Wright," Agent Collins said, studying the file open in front of her, "you've put yourself in an extremely dangerous position." Thomas shifted in his uncomfortable chair, glancing through the one-way window where Sarah sat in the waiting area with Noah and Owen. The boys were reading picture books a receptionist had found for them, their small heads bent together as Sarah helped them with the bigger words. "I couldn't just turn them over to social services," Thomas said. They were terrified, and after what I found online about their mother, Elizabeth Thompson, Agent Collins interrupted, is more than just an accountant who stumbled onto financial irregularities. She closed the file and leaned forward. "She's been working undercover for us for the past 8 months. Thomas felt the floor drop out from under him. "Undercover? You mean she's an agent?" "No, she's exactly who she appears to be, a single mother and forensic accountant. But when she first brought evidence of money laundering to our attention, we asked her to continue gathering information from the inside." Agent Collins's expression was grim. "We had no idea how deep this went, or how dangerous it would become." For her, "What do you mean?" Agent Collins opened another file, this one thick with photographs and documents. Pinnacle Financial Management isn't just laundering money for local drug operations. They're part of an international network that handles finances for some very serious players. Arms dealers, human traffickers, people who don't hesitate to eliminate threats. Thomas stared at the photos she showed him. Expensive cars, private jets, men in expensive suits who somehow managed to look menacing even in corporate headshots. And Elizabeth was gathering evidence on all of this? She was supposed to be pulling back, Agent Collins said quietly. 2 weeks ago, we told her the operation was getting too hot, that she needed to extract herself and the boys immediately. But she said she was close to cracking their main server, getting access to international accounts that would bring down the entire network. So she stayed. She stayed. And 3 days ago, someone inside Pinnacle figured out what she was doing. Agent Collins pulled out a photograph that made Thomas's blood run cold. It showed Elizabeth's abandoned car, driver's side door hanging open, purse scattered on the ground, clear signs of a struggle. "Do you know if she's—" Thomas couldn't finish the question. "We don't know. She had a panic protocol. If she was compromised, she was supposed to send the boys to a safe house we'd established in Grand Junction. Instead, she apparently told them to run, and somehow they ended up walking along mountain highways in January." Thomas rubbed his face, trying to process everything. "Why didn't she follow the protocol?" Agent Collins was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone leaked the safe house location. We found evidence that at least one person in our Denver office has been feeding information to Pinnacle's security team." The implications hit Thomas like a physical blow. "You have a mole." "We have a mole, which means Elizabeth was right not to trust our extraction plan, and it means those boys are safer with you in Cedar Falls than they would be in federal custody right now." Thomas looked through the window again at Noah and Owen, who were now drawing pictures with crayons Sarah had found somewhere. They looked so normal, so innocent. It was impossible to believe they were at the center of an international criminal conspiracy. "What do you need from me?" Thomas asked. Agent Collins studied him carefully. "Are you prepared for what this might mean? These people don't just threaten, they follow through, and they have resources you can't imagine." Thomas thought about his garage, his mortgage payment, his quiet life in Cedar Falls. Then he thought about Owen's nightmares and Noah's two serious eyes. "I'm prepared. Then I need you to go back to Cedar Falls and act normal. Keep the boys safe, but don't change your routine dramatically. We're going to put surveillance on your place, but it has to be subtle. If Pinnacle's people realize we're protecting you, they'll know the boys are there. What about finding Elizabeth?" Agent Collins's expression softened slightly. "We're doing everything we can. But Mr. Wright, you need to understand. The boys may be the only witnesses to whatever Elizabeth discovered. If something has happened to her, they might be the key to bringing down an organization that's responsible for dozens of deaths." Thomas felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders. They're 5 years old. They don't know anything about financial crimes. No, but Elizabeth was smart. If she found something big enough to risk her life for, she would have found a way to preserve it. Maybe something she gave to the boys, maybe something she taught them, maybe even something she hid that only they would know about. As they prepared to leave, Agent Collins handed Thomas a business card with her direct number. "Call me if anything unusual happens. Anything. Strange cars, unfamiliar faces, people asking questions about new kids in town. These people are very good at what they do." The drive back to Cedar Falls was quiet. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, occasionally glancing back at the boys who had fallen asleep in their car seats, borrowed from the FBI office. Thomas's mind raced with everything Agent Collins had told him. "Dad," Sarah said quietly, "are we really going to be able to keep them safe?" Thomas gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I know we're going to try." As they crested the hill that led down into Cedar Falls, Thomas saw his small town with new eyes. The narrow main street, the scattered houses, the mountains that surrounded them like protective walls. It all looked different now. This wasn't just his home anymore. It was a fortress he'd have to defend. Back at the garage, as he tucked the exhausted twins into the makeshift beds he'd prepared upstairs, Owen grabbed his hand. "Mr. Thomas," the little boy whispered. "Mama said if anything happened to her, we should remember the song." Thomas knelt beside the bed. "What song?" Noah sat up, rubbing his eyes. "The counting song. She made us practice it every night." "Can you sing it for me?" In small, sweet voices, the twins began to sing what sounded like a simple nursery rhyme about counting stars and following numbers. But as Thomas listened, something nagged at him. The numbers didn't follow a normal pattern, and some of the words seemed strangely specific. As the boys drifted off to sleep, Thomas realized that Elizabeth Thompson might have been even smarter than Agent Collins knew. She hadn't just gathered evidence against Pinnacle Financial. She taught it to her sons in the form of a lullaby. Thomas spent the next morning researching everything he could find about Elizabeth Thompson, while the boys played quietly with Sarah in the apartment above the garage. What he discovered painted a picture of a woman whose life had been shaped by tragedy long before she'd stumbled into the world of organized crime. Elizabeth had grown up in foster care after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. She'd aged out of the system at 18, with nothing but determination and a talent for numbers. Working her way through college as a night janitor, she'd earned degrees in both accounting and computer science, graduating summa cum laude despite having no family support. The twins' father had been killed in Afghanistan when they were barely a year old, not in combat, but in a convoy accident that left Elizabeth a widow at 27 with 2 babies and no life insurance. She'd moved to Denver for better job opportunities and had been struggling to make ends meet when Pinnacle Financial offered her a position with a salary that seemed too good to be true. It probably was. Thomas was still reading when Sarah came. Downstairs, her expression troubled. "Dad, you need to hear this song again. Really listen to it." She led him upstairs, where Noah and Owen were building a fort out of couch cushions. "Boys," Sarah said gently, "can you sing that counting song? And for my dad again, the one your mama taught you?" The twins looked at each other with that familiar, cautious expression. But after a moment, Noah nodded. They sat side by side and began to sing in their sweet, high voices. "Count the stars from 1 to 9. 7, 4, 2, 8 makes the line. Follow numbers, don't you see? 3, 1, 5, 9 sets you free. Account for mountains, account for streams. 6, 2, 7, 4 fulfills your dreams. Cayman wines and Swiss snow white. 8813 shines so bright." Thomas felt his blood turn to ice as the meaning became clear. These weren't random numbers, they were account numbers. Foreign bank account numbers. "Boys," he said carefully, trying to keep his voice casual, "did your mama teach you any other songs?" Owen nodded enthusiastically. "The name song, the one about all mama's friends." Noah began reciting what sounded like a simple rhyme about people, with funny names. But Thomas recognized immediately what it really was, a list of aliases and code names, probably belonging to Pinnacle's international contacts. "There's more," Sarah whispered, leading him back downstairs. "Show him, Owen." Owen reached into the small backpack they'd been carrying when Thomas found them, the only possession they'd managed to keep through their ordeal. From a hidden pocket, he pulled out what looked like a simple coloring book. But when Thomas examined it more closely, his hands began to shake. The coloring book was filled with seemingly innocent drawings, houses, cars, animals, but hidden within the pictures were notations in a code so subtle that anyone casually flipping through would see nothing but a young mother's attempts to entertain her sons. Except Thomas recognized some of the house numbers. They corresponded to addresses he'd heard Agent Collins mention. The license plates on the drawn cars matched patterns he'd seen in the FBI files. And the prices, written next to drawings of toys, were amounts that could only be money laundering transactions. Elizabeth Thompson hadn't just been gathering evidence. She'd been building a complete map of Pinnacle Financial's entire operation, and she'd hidden it in plain sight in her son's children's songs and coloring book. "My God," Thomas breathed. She was brilliant. Sarah looked over his shoulder at the innocent-looking drawings. "This is what those people are after, isn't it? Not just the boys, this information." Thomas nodded grimly. The evidence Elizabeth had compiled could bring down not just Pinnacle Financial, but an entire international network of criminals. Account numbers, contact lists, transaction records, it was all there, disguised as childhood games and songs. "Dad," Sarah said quietly, "if this is what I think it is, we're not just hiding two little boys. We're sitting on evidence that could put dozens of very dangerous people in prison for life." As if summoned by her words, Thomas's phone rang. Agent Collins's number appeared on the screen. "Mr. Wright," her voice was tense, "we have a problem. Someone's been asking questions about new residents in Cedar Falls. Our surveillance team spotted a black SUV with Colorado plates doing slow drives through your neighborhood this morning." Thomas's grip tightened on the phone. "How much time do we have?" "I don't know. They're being careful, probably doing reconnaissance before they make a move. But Mr. Wright, there's something else. We've been analyzing Elizabeth's computer at Pinnacle, and we think she discovered something bigger than just money laundering." "What do you mean?" "We believe Pinnacle wasn't just handling finances for criminal organizations. They were facilitating human trafficking operations, specifically targeting children from the foster care system. Elizabeth would have seen those records, would have known." Thomas felt sick. Elizabeth Thompson, who'd grown up in foster care herself, had discovered that the company she worked for was involved in trafficking vulnerable kids like she'd once been. No wonder she'd risked everything to bring them down. Agent Collins, Thomas said, looking at Noah and Owen, who were now napping on the couch, still clutching their coloring book. I think I know why Elizabeth stayed to gather more evidence, even when you told her to pull back. What do you mean? Thomas told her about the songs, the coloring book, the massive amount of evidence Elizabeth had compiled and hidden with her sons. When he finished, Agent Collins was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Wright," she said finally, "those boys aren't just witnesses. They're carrying enough evidence to dismantle one of the largest criminal networks in North America. And if our suspects realize that..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Thomas understood. The people hunting Noah and Owen weren't just trying to eliminate witnesses to their mother's investigation. They were trying to recover evidence that could destroy their entire operation, and that evidence was currently sleeping on his couch, disguised as nursery rhymes and crayon drawings. As Thomas hung up the phone, he realized that everything had changed again. He wasn't just protecting two frightened little boys anymore. He was guarding the key to bringing justice for countless victims, including Elizabeth Thompson, who'd sacrificed everything to make sure her sons could finish what she'd started. The bare weight of that responsibility was almost crushing, but as he looked at Noah and Owen, peaceful in sleep for the first time since he'd found them, Thomas Wright made another choice that would define the rest of his life. He wasn't giving up. No matter what came next, they came at sunset, when the mountain shadows were long and the streets of Cedar Falls were nearly empty. Thomas first noticed them while he was closing up the garage for the day, a convoy of 5 black SUVs moving slowly down Main Street like a funeral procession, their tinted windows reflecting the dying light. His blood turned to ice. These weren't FBI vehicles or local law enforcement. These were the wolves Agent Collins had warned him about. Thomas quickly locked the garage and ran upstairs, taking the steps 3 at a time. "Sarah!" he called urgently. "Get the boys and go to your room. Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you." Sarah looked up from where she was helping Noah and Owen with a puzzle, immediately reading the fear in her father's voice. "Dad, what's..." "Now, Sarah, please." She gathered the twins without question, ushering them toward her bedroom. Owen looked back with worried eyes. "Mr. Thomas, are the bad men here?" "Just stay with Sarah," Thomas said, forcing his voice to remain calm. "Everything's going to be okay." But as he watched the SUVs pull into a perfect formation in front of his garage, Thomas wasn't sure he believed his own words. The vehicles sat there for several minutes, engines idling, creating an atmosphere of menace that seemed to press against the windows of his small apartment. Thomas could see neighbors peering out from behind curtains, sensing something wrong, but not understanding what they were witnessing. Finally, doors began opening. The men who emerged weren't the crude thugs Thomas had expected. They were professionals, wearing expensive suits despite the mountain cold, moving with military precision, each one clearly armed despite the concealed nature of their weapons. There were at least 15 of them, more than enough to handle one small-town mechanic and his family. The leader was a tall man in his 50s, with silver hair and cold gray eyes. He approached the garage with the confident stride of someone accustomed to getting his way through intimidation. When he knocked on the door, it was 3 precise raps that somehow managed to sound like a demand. Thomas made sure the apartment door was locked behind him before heading downstairs. He opened the garage door to find the man standing there with 2 companions flanking him like bodyguards. "Mr. Wright," the man said in a voice that carried a slight accent Thomas couldn't place. "My name is Byron King. I represent certain business interests that have been inconvenienced by some missing property." "I don't know what you're talking about," Thomas replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Byron King smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "Of course you don't. May I come in?" It's quite cold out here, and we have much to discuss. Thomas wanted to refuse, but the sight of the other men positioned around his property suggested that this wasn't really a request. He stepped aside and allowed Byron King to enter the garage, though he made sure to stay near the door. "Impressive operation you have here," King said, looking around at the modest garage with obvious disdain. "Very quaint. I imagine it provides a comfortable living for a man of simple needs. What do you want?" King walked over to Thomas's workbench and picked up a wrench, examining it with exaggerated interest. "I want what every businessman wants, Mr. Wright, a return on my investment. You see, certain items have gone missing from my organization, items that belong to me. I don't have anything that belongs to you." "Oh, but you do." King set down the wrench and turned to face Thomas directly. "Two very specific items that were removed from my possession without authorization. I believe you call them Noah and Owen." Thomas felt his hands clench into fists. "Those boys aren't property. They're human beings. They are whatever I say they are," King replied, his voice hardening. "And right now, they are thieves in possession of stolen information that could cause significant damage to my business. Operations? They're 5 years old. Age is irrelevant. They have something I need, and I will have it back." King began walking slowly around the garage, his footsteps echoing in the concrete space. "You see, Mr. Wright, Elizabeth Thompson was a very foolish woman. She thought she could steal from me, lie to me, betray the trust I placed in her. She thought wrong." Thomas's heart hammered in his chest. "Where is she?" King paused his circling and smiled again. "Ms. Thompson discovered that there are consequences for disloyalty, permanent consequences." The implication hit Thomas like a physical blow. Elizabeth was dead. These monsters had killed a mother for trying to protect vulnerable children. "Now," King continued, "you have a choice to make. You can return my property, all of it, including any information the boys may have memorized. And this unpleasant business can be concluded quietly. Or you can continue this foolish attempt at heroism and discover what happens to people who interfere with my operations. And if I refuse," King gestured toward the window, where Thomas could see the other men positioned around his property, "then I'm afraid your charming little family will experience the same consequences as Ms. Thompson, starting with your daughter, who seems like such a sweet girl." Thomas felt rage building in his chest like a fire. This man was threatening Sarah, threatening 2 innocent little boys, threatening him for the crime of showing basic human decency. "Of course," King added conversationally, "there's also the matter of your business. It would be unfortunate if something were to happen to this garage, a fire perhaps, or maybe the bank might suddenly find irregularities in your loan payments. These things happen to people who make poor choices." Thomas looked around his garage, the business his father had started, the livelihood he'd built with his own hands, the only security he could offer his daughter. King was offering him a choice between saving his own life and protecting 2 boys who had already lost everything. "I need time to think," Thomas said finally. Byron King checked his expensive watch. "You have 1 hour, Mr. Wright. 60 minutes to bring the boys and any materials they may have with them to this garage. After that, my patience expires and your problems become much more serious." He walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Wright, don't even consider calling your FBI friends. Agent Collins is currently dealing with some urgent matters back in Denver, something about evidence tampering charges. She won't be taking any calls tonight." With that, Byron King walked out of the garage, leaving Thomas alone with the weight of an impossible choice. Through the window, he could see the SUVs maintaining their positions, the men inside patient as predators waiting for prey to make a fatal mistake. Upstairs, Sarah and the twins were waiting for him to somehow make this nightmare go away. Thomas Wright, small-town mechanic, was about to find out what he was really made of. Thomas climbed the stairs to his apartment with legs that felt like lead. Each step carried the weight of Byron King's ultimatum, the image of those cold grey eyes, and the knowledge that in 58 minutes he would have to make a choice that would define not just his own life, but the lives of everyone he cared about. Sarah was waiting for him in the living room, her face pale but determined. "Dad?" I could hear voices. Who was that man? Thomas looked towards Sarah's bedroom, where he could hear Noah and Owen talking quietly to each other. Such normal sounds. Two little boys trying to make sense of a world that had become incomprehensible. He turned back to his daughter, seeing so much of her mother in the set of her jaw, the way she squared her shoulders when she was scared, but trying to be brave. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Thomas said, sitting down beside her on the couch. "The man downstairs wants to take Noah and Owen. He's given us 1 hour to hand them over." Sarah's eyes widened. "And if we don't?" Thomas couldn't bring himself to repeat King's specific threats about what would happen to her. "Then things get very dangerous for all of us. So what are we going to do?" Thomas looked at his daughter. This brave, smart, compassionate young woman who had never hesitated to help two frightened little boys. In that moment, he realized that the choice wasn't really about what he was willing to risk. It was about what kind of man he wanted to be, what kind of father he wanted to be, and what kind of world he wanted to help create. "We're not giving them up," he said quietly. Sarah's face showed relief mixed with terror. "Dad," that man looked at... there are so many of them, and they have guns, and... "I know." Thomas took her hands. "Sarah, I know this is scary. I know the smart thing might be to walk away, to protect ourselves, but those boys have already lost their mother. They've already been through more than any young person should have to endure. I can't be the person who hands them over to the monsters who killed Elizabeth." From the bedroom came the soft sound of Owen crying, probably from another nightmare. Thomas heard Noah's voice, gentle and protective, comforting his brother the way he'd been doing for days. "Besides," Thomas added, "we're not just protecting Noah and Owen. We're protecting all the other vulnerable people those men have hurt and will hurt in the future. Elizabeth died trying to stop them. The least we can do is finish what she started." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. "Okay, so what's the plan?" Thomas almost smiled, despite the circumstances. His daughter had inherited more than just her mother's stubbornness. She'd inherited her sense of justice, too. "First, we get the boys' evidence somewhere safe," Thomas said. "If something happens to us, that information needs to survive. Second, we call everyone we trust in this town and ask for help." "You think people will actually stand up to those men?" Thomas thought about the people of Cedar Falls, tough mountain folk who'd chosen to live in an isolated valley because they valued independence and community over convenience. People like Bill Anderson, who ran the hardware store and had served 2 tours in Iraq. Like Stephanie Baker, who owned the diner and had raised 5 kids on her own after her husband died in a mining accident. Like old Daniel Thomas, who'd been the town's volunteer fire chief for 30 years and still responded to every emergency call, despite being in his 70s. "Sarah, this town is full of people who came here because they believe in taking care of each other. Most of them are armed, all of them are stubborn, and none of them like outsiders coming in and making threats." Thomas went to his closet and pulled out a hunting rifle he'd inherited from his father. He hadn't fired it in years, but he cleaned and maintained it religiously. "I'm not saying we're going to win a gunfight against professional criminals, but I am saying we don't have to face this alone." While Sarah helped Noah and Owen pack their coloring book and few belongings into a backpack, Thomas began making phone calls. The first was to Bill Anderson. "Bill, it's Thomas Wright. I need your help with something dangerous, and I can't explain much over the phone. Can you meet me at the garage in 20 minutes? "Thomas, you sound like hell. What's going on?" "I'm protecting 2 little boys. from some very bad people, people who are threatening to hurt Sarah if I don't hand them over. There was a pause, then, I'll be there in 15, and Thomas, I'm bringing friends. The next call was to Stephanie Baker, then to Daniel Thomas, then to Dr. Ashley Green. Each conversation was brief, but the response was the same. They would come. As Thomas finished his calls, Sarah emerged from the bedroom with the twins. Noah was clutching his coloring book, while Owen held tight to a small stuffed bear that had somehow survived their ordeal. "Mr. Thomas," Noah said solemnly, "are the bad men going to take us away?" Thomas knelt down to their eye level. "Boys, do you remember what I promised you? That I would never let anyone hurt you?" Both boys nodded. "Well, I meant it, but I need you to be very brave for a little while longer. Some of my friends are coming to help us, but it might get scary. Can you do that? Will you stay with us?" Owen asked in a small voice. "I'm not going anywhere," Thomas said firmly. "Sarah and we're going to make sure you're safe. That's a promise. That's a promise." 15 minutes later, Thomas heard vehicles pulling up outside. Not the menacing black SUVs, but pickup trucks and older cars driven by people he'd known for years. He looked out the window and felt his heart swell with something that might have been hope. Bill Anderson was there with his military bearing and a rifle case. Stephanie Baker had arrived with her eldest son, both of them carrying what looked like hunting gear. Daniel Thomas climbed slowly out of his old Ford, but Thomas could see the fire chief's radio on his belt and knew that meant other volunteers were on the way. Most surprising was Dr. Ashley Green, who emerged from her car with a medical bag and a determined expression that reminded Thomas why she'd chosen to practice medicine in a place where she'd sometimes have to treat gunshot wounds and mining accidents. As his friends gathered in the garage, Thomas realized that Byron King had made a critical miscalculation. He'd assumed that threatening a small-town mechanic would be like intimidating any other isolated individual. But Cedar Falls wasn't just a place on a map. It was a community, and communities protected their own. When King returned in 37 minutes, he wouldn't be facing just Thomas Wright. He'd be facing an entire town that had decided 2 little boys were worth fighting for. Thomas checked his watch. 42 minutes until King's ultimatum expired. 42 minutes to turn an auto repair garage into a fortress and a group of ordinary citizens into the last line of defense for 2 innocent boys. It was going to have to be enough. The garage had been transformed into something that looked like a combination war room and community center. Bill Anderson had spread a map of Cedar Falls across Thomas's workbench, marking strategic positions with the precision of someone who'd planned military operations in hostile territory. Stephanie Baker had taken charge of communications, using her diner's radio system to coordinate with other volunteers throughout the town. Daniel Thomas sat in the corner, his weathered hands steady as he checked the mechanisms of hunting rifles that hadn't been fired in anger since the Korean War. But it was Dr. Ashley Green who surprised Thomas the most. The quiet physician had arrived with more than just her medical bag. She'd brought a tablet computer and was rapidly typing what appeared to be a detailed report. "What are you working on?" Thomas asked, kneeling beside her. Ashley looked up, her brown eyes intense with purpose. "A complete documentation of everything that's happened here. Names, dates, threats, evidence. If Byron King thinks he can intimidate a town into silence, he's about to learn how wrong he is." She gestured to her screen, which showed a video file. "I've been recording testimonies from everyone here. Bill's military service record, Stephanie's connections throughout the state, Daniel's 40 years of emergency response experience. When this is over, we're not just going to have protected Noah and Owen. We're going to have built an unshakable case against these people." Thomas felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about surviving the next hour anymore. The People in his garage weren't just helping him protect two boys. They were building something that could outlast any single threat. "There's more," Ashley continued, lowering her voice. "I've been in contact with a colleague in Denver, someone outside the FBI network that might be compromised. She's put me in touch with reporters, advocacy groups, federal prosecutors who specialize in organized crime. Thomas, what Elizabeth discovered isn't just evidence. It's the key to dismantling an entire system that preys on vulnerable people." Sarah appeared at Thomas's shoulder, having overheard the conversation. "You mean this could help other kids? Kids like Noah and Owen, who might be in danger right now?" "Exactly," Ashley said, her voice growing stronger. "But only if we survive long enough to get the story out there properly." Bill Anderson looked up from his map. "Which brings us back to the immediate problem. We've got about 30 minutes before these bastards expect an answer. Thomas, what do you want to do?" Thomas looked around the garage at the faces of his friends and neighbors. These weren't soldiers or law enforcement officers. They were ordinary people who'd chosen to risk everything because it was the right thing to do. The weight of that responsibility was enormous, but so was the strength it gave him. "We're not handing over the boys," Thomas said firmly, "but we're also not just going to wait here for a gunfight. We're going to go on the offensive." He moved to the workbench where Ashley had set up her laptop. "Dr. Green, how quickly can you upload everything we have to your contacts? The boys' songs, the coloring book evidence, documentation of the threats, all of it? Give me 15 minutes with a stable internet connection." Stephanie Baker raised her hand. "My diner has the best Wi-Fi in town, and it's got backup power. Plus, it's got sight lines in all directions. Anyone approaching has to cross open ground." Daniel Thomas nodded slowly. "The fire station's right next to the diner. If we move the boys there, we've got multiple escape routes and direct communication with state authorities." Thomas felt the plan crystallizing. "So we don't just defend, we broadcast. We make Noah and Owen's stories so public, so well documented, that silencing them becomes impossible." "What about King and his men?" Bill asked. "They're not just going to let us walk away." Thomas thought about Byron King's cold confidence, his assumption that a small mountain town would fold under pressure. King is used to operating in the shadows, threatening people who are isolated and vulnerable. But what happens when you drag something that lives in darkness into the light? Ashley was already packing up her equipment. "We make him the story, instead of the boys. Every threat he's made, every connection to Pinnacle Financial, every link to the larger criminal network, it all goes public simultaneously." Sarah had been listening intently, and now she spoke up with an idea that made Thomas proud of how smart and brave his daughter had become. "Dad, what if we don't wait for King to come back here? What if we're already gone when his hour is up? And what if the whole town knows exactly what's happening?" The adults looked at her with new respect. Stephanie Baker smiled grimly. "Smart girl. King's expecting to intimidate an isolated family. Instead, he'll find an empty garage and a town full of witnesses who are ready to testify against him." But it was Daniel Thomas who provided the final piece of the puzzle. "I've been thinking about this all wrong," the old fire chief said slowly. "We're not trying to win a war against these people. We're trying to light a signal fire that's so bright, so impossible to ignore, that help comes running." Over the next 20 minutes, Cedar Falls mobilized with the efficiency of a community that had faced natural disasters and economic hardships together for generations. Stephanie coordinated with the mayor to ensure local law enforcement was prepared. Bill used his military contacts to reach federal agencies outside the potentially compromised FBI network. Daniel activated the volunteer fire department's emergency communication system, creating a network that stretched across 3 counties, and Ashley worked frantically to upload terabytes of evidence to secure servers, creating multiple copies that would be simultaneously released to news organizations, prosecutors, and advocacy groups if anything happened to them. Thomas found himself standing in the middle of controlled chaos, watching his small town transform itself into something unprecedented, a community that had decided to take on international organized crime, not with violence, but with transparency, courage, and an unshakable commitment to protecting the vulnerable. Noah and Owen sat quietly in the corner, still clutching their coloring book and stuffed bear, but their eyes had lost some of the haunted look that had torn at Thomas's heart. They were surrounded by adults who were clearly working to protect them, who spoke to them gently and treated them like the precious kids they were, rather than the valuable assets King saw them as. "Mr. Thomas," Owen said softly, tugging at his sleeve, "are all these people here because of us?" Thomas knelt down to the little boy's eye level. "They're here because they believe every young person deserves to be safe and loved, just like your mama believed." Noah looked up from his coloring book, his young face serious. "Mama always said that good people have to help each other, especially when bad people try to hurt someone." "Your mama was a very smart woman," Thomas said, "and she would be so proud of how brave you boys have been." As the minutes ticked down to King's deadline, Thomas realized that something extraordinary had happened in his small garage. They hadn't just planned a defense, they'd created a movement. They hadn't just protected two boys, they'd built a community response that could serve as a model for standing up to predators everywhere. When Byron King returned, expecting to find a frightened mechanic ready to surrender, he would instead discover that he'd picked a fight with something much more dangerous than an individual family. He'd picked a fight with a community that had decided to care more about justice than safety, more about protecting innocence than preserving their own comfort. And in doing so, Thomas Wright and the people of Cedar Falls were about to prove that sometimes ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things simply by refusing to look the other way when evil demanded their silence. The countdown continued, but Thomas no longer felt like he was racing toward a confrontation. He felt like he was building towards something that would outlast any single threat. A proof that communities could still come together to protect the vulnerable and stand up for what was right. Whatever happened in the next few minutes, they had already won something important. The diner had never looked more like a fortress and a sanctuary at the same time. Stephanie Baker had cleared out all the customers and locked the doors, but left the lights on and the coffee brewing, making it clear that Cedar Falls wasn't hiding from Byron King's threats, just reorganizing to meet them on their own terms. Thomas sat at a corner booth with Noah and Owen, watching Ashley work at her laptop with the intense focus of a surgeon performing a life-saving operation. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she uploaded the final pieces of evidence to secure servers around the country. Every few seconds, her phone buzzed with confirmations from news organizations, federal prosecutors, and advocacy groups. "Last upload complete," she announced, looking up with exhausted relief. Noah and Owen's evidence is now in the hands of investigative journalists in 5 states, federal prosecutors in 3 districts, and the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Sarah, who had been helping coordinate communications from the diner's radio setup, turned from her station. "Dad, Bill says King's SUVs are moving. They're heading toward the garage." Thomas checked his watch. King's 1-hour deadline had passed 15 minutes ago. The criminal leader was probably expecting to find a terrified mechanic ready to hand over 2 frightened boys. Instead, he would find an empty building and a town that had documented every threat he'd made. But as Thomas looked around the diner at the faces of his friends and neighbors, he realized something had changed in the past hour that went far beyond their strategic preparations. These people weren't just helping him anymore. They were family now, bound together by shared risk and shared purpose. Ashley closed her laptop and moved to sit across from Thomas. For the first time since this crisis began, she looked like she might actually allow herself to believe they were going to survive this. "Thomas," she said quietly. "I need to tell you something about why I came back to Cedar Falls." Thomas had wondered about that. Ashley had graduated medical school with honors, done her residency at one of the most prestigious hospitals in Denver. She could have gone anywhere, made 10 times the money she earned in their small mountain clinic. "I grew up in foster care." "In too," Ashley said, glancing toward Noah and Owen, who were coloring quietly in another booth under Sarah's watchful eye. "Not here, down in Colorado Springs. But I aged out of the system at 18 with nothing but a scholarship and a determination to help kids who'd been through what I had." Thomas felt something shift in his understanding of the woman sitting across from him. "That's why you didn't hesitate to help tonight. When I saw those boys, when I heard their story." Ashley's voice caught slightly. "I saw myself 20 years ago, scared, alone, dependent on strangers for basic kindness." She looked directly at Thomas. "Do you know what saved me? One person who decided I was worth fighting for. My high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She didn't just help me fill out college applications. She invited me to family dinners, helped me buy clothes for interviews, drove me to campus when I couldn't afford a bus ticket." Thomas reached across the table and took her hand. "That's who you are for these boys now." Ashley's eyes glistened. "That's who we all are for them now." "But Thomas, what we've built here tonight, this community response, it's bigger than just Noah and Owen. We've created a model for how to protect vulnerable people when the system fails them." Before Thomas could respond, Daniel Thomas's voice crackled over the radio. "All units, this is base. King's people have reached the garage. They're not happy about finding it empty." Through the diner's front window, Thomas could see the distant glow of headlights near his garage. He imagined Byron King's cold fury at discovering his careful intimidation had backfired so completely. Stephanie Baker emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of sandwiches and hot chocolate. "Figured everyone should eat," she said, but Thomas noticed her hands were shaking slightly. For all her strength and determination, she was still a civilian facing off against dangerous criminals. "Stephanie," Thomas said gently, "you don't have to do this. None of you do. You've already done more than enough." Stephanie set down the tray with more force than necessary. "Thomas Wright, don't you dare try to protect me from my own choices. You think I don't know what kind of people we're dealing with? You think I don't understand the risks?" She sat down heavily in the booth beside Ashley. "My youngest daughter is the same age as those boys. If something happened to me and she was running from monsters, I'd pray to God that someone like you would take her in. I'd pray that a whole community would stand up for her." Ashley squeezed Stephanie's hand. "We're all scared, but we're scared together, and that makes us stronger." From across the diner, Owen's voice piped up. "Miss Ashley, are you really a doctor?" "Like you said," Ashley smiled, the tension in her face softening. "I really am. Why do you ask?" "Because doctors help people feel better," Owen said, with the simple logic of a 5-year-old. "And my tummy doesn't hurt anymore when you're here." The adults exchanged looks loaded with emotion. These boys had been carrying trauma that went far beyond physical injuries. They'd been carrying the weight of fear, abandonment, and loss that no young person should have to bear. Noah looked up from his coloring book. "Mr. Thomas, when we sang Mama's songs for you, you didn't get mad like the bad men would have." Thomas felt his throat tighten. "Why would I get mad?" "Because Mama said the songs were secrets, and secrets sometimes make grown-ups angry." Noah's voice was very small, "But you just listened, and you helped us remember Mama." Sarah had been listening from her radio station, and now she came over to kneel beside the boys' booth. "Noah, Owen, do you want to know something? My mama went away when I was little too. Not like your mama. She chose to leave. But my dad never got angry when I talked about her or missed her." She looked at Thomas with eyes full of love and gratitude. He taught me that the people who really care about you want you to remember the people you love, even when it hurts. Thomas had to look away for a moment, overwhelmed by the depth of what was happening in this small diner. They weren't just protecting Noah and Owen from external threats. They were helping them heal from internal wounds that ran bone deep. Bill Anderson's voice came over the radio, breaking the emotional moment. "Base, this is Perimeter 1. King's people are leaving the garage area. Looks like they're regrouping, probably trying to figure out where everyone went." Ashley immediately went back into strategic mode. "How long before they start checking? Obvious locations like the diner." "Not long," Daniel Thomas replied over the radio. "But we've got eyes on all approaches, and state police units are en route. Should be here within the hour." Thomas looked around the diner one more time, at Ashley's laptop full of evidence that would bring down an international criminal network, at Stephanie's determined face as she coordinated with emergency responders, at Sarah's gentle interaction with two traumatized boys, at the radio chatter that proved an entire community was watching over them. "Ashley," he said quietly, "regardless of what happens tonight, we need to keep this going, this network, this community response. We need to make it permanent." Ashley nodded, understanding immediately what he meant. A sanctuary program, not just for emergency situations, but an ongoing resource for vulnerable families, training for community members, coordination with law enforcement agencies that we trust, legal advocacy, trauma counseling. Exactly. What if Cedar Falls became the place where people like Elizabeth could bring their families when traditional systems failed them? As if sensing the importance of the conversation happening around them, Noah and Owen had stopped coloring and were listening with the intense attention that came from their young lives, depending on the decisions adults made. "Would that mean other kids like us could come here?" Owen asked. Thomas knelt down beside their booth. "Would you like that?" Both boys nodded solemnly. "Mama always said we should help other people who are scared," Noah said. "Maybe we could teach them the songs that helped us remember her." In that moment, Thomas Wright realized that this crisis had transformed not just his own life, but the entire trajectory of his small mountain community. They weren't just surviving Byron King's threats. They were building something that would outlast any individual danger, something that would honor Elizabeth Thompson's sacrifice and ensure that her son's suffering had meaning. The bonds forged in this diner, under pressure that would have broken weaker connections, were going to last a lifetime. The state police arrived like a thunderstorm, breaking across the valley, 12 vehicles with sirens that echoed off the mountain walls, their red and blue lights painting the night in colors of justice finally. Arriving, Thomas watched through the diner's front window as the convoy surrounded Byron King's black SUVs in the parking lot of his garage, and for the first time in hours, he felt like he could actually breathe. But it was the unmarked sedan that pulled up in front of the diner that made Ashley grab his arm with excitement. "That's Agent Patricia Williams," she said, checking her phone as it buzzed with a text message. "The federal prosecutor I've been coordinating with. She's not FBI, she's from the Justice Department's Organized Crime Task Force." Agent Williams was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades taking down dangerous criminals. She entered the diner with 3 other federal agents, all of them carrying tablets and recording equipment that suggested this wasn't just a rescue operation. It was the final phase of a carefully planned investigation. "Mr. Wright," Agent Williams said, extending her hand, "Dr. Green has been keeping us informed of your situation. I want you to know that what you've accomplished here tonight, the evidence you've preserved, the community response you've organized, it's going to change everything." Thomas felt Sarah move to stand beside him, her hand finding his arm in a gesture of support that reminded him how much his daughter had grown through this crisis. "What do you mean?" Agent Williams gestured to Noah and Owen, who were watching the proceedings with wide eyes while staying close to Ashley. Those boys and the information their mother encoded in their songs and drawings. It's the key to dismantling the largest money laundering and human trafficking operation we've ever encountered. Pinnacle Financial was just the tip of the iceberg. She opened her tablet and showed them a map covered in red dots. Thanks to Elizabeth Thompson's evidence and the additional documentation Dr. Green compiled tonight, we've initiated simultaneous raids in 7 states and 3 countries. We're talking about hundreds of arrests, millions of dollars in seized assets, and most importantly, the rescue of dozens of trafficked individuals. Ashley leaned forward, her medical training making her focus on the human cost. The kids who were being trafficked, are they safe? They're being removed from dangerous situations as we speak, Agent Williams confirmed. And thanks to the sanctuary model you've developed here in Cedar Falls, we actually have a framework for providing them with community-based care instead of just throwing them into an overwhelmed foster system. Thomas felt something profound shift in his understanding of what they'd accomplished. You're saying this could be replicated in other communities? Mr. Wright, what happened here tonight is exactly what we've been trying to figure out for years. How to protect vulnerable people when traditional systems fail or become corrupted. The way your community came together, the speed and efficiency of your response, the integration of medical care, legal advocacy, and trauma-informed support. It's a model we want to help you export to other small towns across the country. From across the diner, Stephanie Baker called out, "Agent Williams, what about the immediate threat? Byron King and his people?" Agent Williams smiled grimly. Mr. King is currently being read his rights on charges of conspiracy, money laundering, human trafficking, kidnapping, and making terroristic threats. He'll never see the outside of a federal prison again. She paused, looking directly at Noah and Owen. "Boys, you're safe now. The bad men can't hurt you anymore." Owen looked up at Thomas with trust that went bone deep. "Does that mean we can stay with Mr. Thomas and Miss Sarah?" Thomas felt his heart clench. He'd grown so attached to these boys that the thought of losing them now felt unbearable. But he was also a realist. He was a single father struggling to make ends meet, living in a small apartment above a garage. How could he possibly provide the kind of stability and resources that traumatized 5-year-olds needed? Agent Williams seemed to read his thoughts. "Mr. Wright, there's something else we need to discuss. Elizabeth Thompson's will." Thomas blinked. Her will? Elizabeth was smarter than any of us realized. When she first contacted us 8 months ago, she worked with our legal team to establish a trust fund for her sons, using some of the evidence she'd gathered to freeze and seize assets from Pinnacle Financial's accounts. She also specified very clear instructions about their care if anything happened to her. Agent Williams pulled out a legal document. She designated that Noah and Owen should be placed with any family willing to love them as their own, preferably in a small community where they can heal and grow, surrounded by people who understand that kindness is stronger than fear. Thomas stared at the document, his mind racing. She didn't name a specific guardian. She did name one preference, Agent Williams said with a slight smile. She wrote, "If someone emerges during this crisis who risks their own safety to protect my sons, who sees them as precious youngsters rather than valuable assets, who brings together a community to stand up for what's right, that person has already proven they understand what being a parent truly means." The diner fell completely silent, except for the distant sounds of law enforcement vehicles and radio chatter from outside. Thomas looked at Noah and Owen, then at Sarah, then at Ashley, whose eyes were bright with tears. "There's more," Agent Williams continued. "The trust fund Elizabeth established, combined with assets we've recovered from Pinnacle Financial, amounts to approximately $2.8 million. It's specifically designated for the boys' care, education, and the establishment of a community-based sanctuary program in whatever town they call home. Sarah gasped. That's enough to fund the sanctuary program and pay for the boys' needs. More than enough, Agent Williams confirmed. But Elizabeth was very specific. The money can only be used if the boys are placed with a family that commits to making the sanctuary program a permanent part of their community. Thomas felt the weight of possibility and responsibility settling on his shoulders. He looked at Ashley, who was studying the legal documents with the focused attention she brought to everything important. Thomas, Ashley said quietly, Elizabeth essentially designed a way to ensure her sons would be raised in a community dedicated to protecting vulnerable kids. She turned her tragedy into a blueprint for preventing other tragedies. Before Thomas could respond, Noah appeared at his elbow, tugging on his shirt. Mr. Thomas, Miss Ashley, are you going to be our new mama and daddy? The question hung in the air like a prayer. Thomas looked at Ashley, seeing in her face the same combination of love, hope, and terror that he felt in his own heart. Boys, Ashley said gently, kneeling down to their eye level. Would you like that? Yes, Owen said immediately. You make us feel safe. And Miss Sarah is the best big sister ever. Noah nodded solemnly. Mama told us that families aren't just about blood. She said families are about people who choose to love each other every day. Thomas felt his throat tighten with emotion. He looked at Ashley, this remarkable woman who'd emerged from her own traumatic childhood to become a healer, who'd risked everything tonight to protect two boys she barely knew, who'd seen the same vision he had for building something that could help vulnerable families. Ashley, he said quietly, I know this is happening fast, and I know it's complicated, but... She stood up, moving close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Thomas Wright, are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you want to build a life together, not just because of the boys, not just because of the sanctuary program, but because, he paused, searching for words adequate to the moment, because I've fallen in love with who you are. Your courage, your compassion, the way you see solutions where other people see problems. I'm asking if you want to be partners, in every sense of the word. Ashley's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Yes, to all of it. Yes to the boys, yes to the sanctuary, yes to building something beautiful together. She reached up and kissed him, and Thomas felt like everything in his life had suddenly aligned into perfect focus. When they broke apart, they were surrounded by applause from everyone in the diner, Stephanie wiping her eyes, Daniel Thomas grinning behind his coffee cup, Sarah beaming with joy, and Noah and Owen clapping their hands with delight. Agent Williams cleared her throat with professional amusement. I'll take that as an acceptance of guardianship? Absolutely, Thomas and Ashley said simultaneously, then laughed at their synchronization, but it was Sarah who provided the moment that would live in Thomas's memory forever. She knelt down beside Noah and Owen, her voice serious but warm. Boys, I want you to know something. When I was little and my mom left, I used to dream about having brothers. I used to wish for a family that chose to stay together instead of falling apart. She looked up at Thomas and Ashley. I never imagined I'd get such amazing little brothers and such a perfect stepmom all at the same time. Noah and Owen launched themselves at Sarah, wrapping their small arms around her neck in a group hug that brought tears to every adult eye in the room. Over the next hour, as federal agents continued processing evidence and arrests, the people of Cedar Falls began planning their future. Bill Anderson volunteered to help convert an unused building on Main Street into the sanctuary's headquarters. Stephanie Baker offered to coordinate community volunteer training. Daniel Thomas promised to work with law enforcement agencies to develop rapid response protocols. And Dr. Ashley Green soon to be Dr. Ashley Wright, began sketching out plans for a comprehensive program that would provide trauma-informed care, legal advocacy, educational support, and community integration for vulnerable families. As dawn began to break over the mountains, Thomas stood on the diner's front porch with his new family. Sarah had fallen asleep in a booth, exhausted by the emotional intensity of the night. Noah and Owen were curled up together on another bench, finally peaceful in their sleep. Ashley stood beside him, her hand in his, watching the sunrise paint the valley in shades of gold and promise. "Do you think we can really do this?" Thomas asked quietly. "Build something that lasts? Create a place where kids like Noah and Owen never have to be afraid?" Ashley squeezed his hand. "Thomas, look what we accomplished in one night with nothing but determination and community spirit. Imagine what we can do with resources, time, and love." From inside the diner came the sound of Owen laughing at something Sarah was saying as she woke up, followed by Noah's voice asking if they could have pancakes for breakfast. "Besides," Ashley added with a smile, "we've got the best reasons in the world to make it work." Thomas kissed her forehead, feeling like the luckiest man alive. 12 hours ago, he'd been a struggling mechanic facing financial ruin. Now he was part of a family, a community leader, and a guardian to 2 little boys who'd survived the unimaginable. Elizabeth Thompson's sacrifice had been transformed into something beautiful, a legacy of protection, love, and hope that would ripple outward to help countless vulnerable families for generations to come. And it all started with a simple choice to hear cries in a storm and refuse to walk away. 2 years later, the morning sun streaming through the windows of the Cedar Falls Community Sanctuary Center caught the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny stars, illuminating a scene that would have been impossible to imagine just 24 months earlier. Thomas Wright, now Thomas Wright Green, after he and Ashley had decided to hyphenate their names, stood in the main reception area, watching 7-year-old Noah help a new arrival, a little girl named Emma who had just escaped a trafficking situation in Nevada. "The scared feeling goes away," Noah was saying with the quiet wisdom of someone who'd survived the unimaginable. "It takes a while, but it really does. And Miss Ashley gives the best hugs, and Mr. Thomas makes pancakes shaped like dinosaurs." Thomas felt his heart swell as he watched his son, and Noah was truly his son now in every way that mattered, offering comfort to another frightened youngster with the natural empathy that came from understanding what it meant to be lost and then found. The Sanctuary Center occupied what had once been an abandoned hotel on the outskirts of Cedar Falls. With Elizabeth Thompson's trust fund and additional federal grants, they'd transformed the building into something unprecedented. A comprehensive care facility that provided everything from emergency housing to legal advocacy to trauma counseling, all within a community-based model that treated vulnerable families as whole human beings rather than bureaucratic problems to be processed. Ashley emerged from her office, her face lighting up as she saw Thomas. Even after 2 years of marriage, he still felt that flutter of amazement that this incredible woman had chosen to build a life with him. She'd gained about 15 pounds since their wedding, the good kind of weight that came from finally feeling safe enough to relax, and her smile came easier now, reaching all the way to her eyes. "How's our newest arrival settling in?" Ashley asked, nodding toward Emma, who was now coloring alongside Noah and Owen at one of the small tables scattered throughout the reception area. "Better than expected. Noah's taken her under his wing." Ashley's expression grew soft. "He's going to make an amazing social worker someday. Both boys are. They have this gift for making traumatized kids feel understood." It was true. Noah and Owen had not only healed from their own trauma, they'd transformed it into a superpower for helping others. They'd been featured in a documentary about community-based care that had aired on national television, talking about their mother's courage and the family that had chosen to love them. The documentary had generated so much interest that they now had sanctuary programs based on the Cedar Falls model, operating in 43 communities across 12 states. Speaking of the boys, Thomas said, Owen wanted to show you something. When you have a minute, he's in the art therapy room with Miss Jennifer Collins, the same Agent Collins who'd first contacted them, but who'd left the FBI after the Pinnacle financial case to become the Sanctuary's program coordinator, had discovered a talent for working with traumatized kids through creative expression. She'd built an entire curriculum around helping them process their experiences through drawing, music, and storytelling. Ashley and Thomas made their way down the hallway, lined with artwork created by the Sanctuary's residents. Hopeful pictures of families and homes and dreams for the future. They found Owen in the art room, proudly displaying a crayon drawing of what appeared to be a wedding ceremony. Miss Ashley, Mr. Thomas, look what I made for Sarah. Sarah had graduated high school the previous spring with a full scholarship to study social work at Colorado State University. But more importantly, she was engaged to a young man named Michael Clark, a fellow student who'd volunteered at the Sanctuary the previous summer and had fallen in love not just with Sarah, but with the mission she'd grown up supporting. She's going to love it, Ashley said, examining Owen's drawing with the serious attention she gave all the children's artwork. Tell me about all the people in the picture. Owen pointed to each figure with the enthusiasm of a 7-year-old artist. That's Sarah in the pretty white dress, and that's Michael, and that's you and Mr. Thomas, and that's me and Noah, and that's all our Sanctuary families, and that's Mama watching from heaven. Thomas had to look away for a moment. Elizabeth Thompson had become a beloved figure in their family mythology, not as a source of sadness, but as a reminder of the courage it took to protect the people you loved. The boys talked about her often, sharing memories and stories, keeping her spirit alive through their own acts of kindness. Owen, Ashley said gently, would you like to help me frame this so we can give it to Sarah as a surprise? As they worked together, Thomas reflected on how profoundly their lives had changed. The garage still operated. He'd hired 2 full-time mechanics and had expanded the business into a worker cooperative that provided job training for Sanctuary residents. But his real work now was serving as the Sanctuary's community liaison, helping other towns develop their own programs and testifying before Congress about the effectiveness of community-based care for vulnerable populations. The financial transformation had been almost surreal. Elizabeth's trust fund, combined with federal grants and private donations inspired by their story, had not only secured the boys' futures, but had made Thomas and Ashley financially comfortable for the first time in their lives. They'd bought a beautiful house on the edge of town, big enough for their growing family and close enough to the Sanctuary that they could walk to work. But the real transformation had been in Cedar Falls itself, the town that had once been slowly dying, losing young people to cities and struggling economically, had become a destination for people who wanted to be part of something meaningful. Property values had risen, new businesses had opened, and the population had grown by 30% as families moved to Cedar Falls, specifically to be part of the Sanctuary community. Bill Anderson had been elected mayor on a platform of community, care and economic justice. Stephanie Baker had expanded her diner into a catering business that provided job training for Sanctuary residents. Daniel Thomas had become the state's leading expert on rural emergency response systems. The ripple effects had reached far beyond their small mountain town. The Cedar Falls model had been studied by universities, replicated by non-profits, and cited in policy papers arguing for fundamental changes in how society approached child welfare and victim services. Mr. Thomas. Noah appeared in the doorway, his face serious. There's a lady here who wants to talk to you. She says she drove here from Oregon because she heard about our sanctuary. Thomas found the woman in the main reception area, middle-aged, wearing clothes that suggested she'd been driving for days, her eyes carrying the haunted look he'd learned to recognize in people who'd escaped dangerous situations. "Mr. Wright," she said, standing up quickly. "My name is Lauren Brown. I have my daughter with me. She's 8. We've been running from my ex-husband for 6 months. He's involved with some very dangerous people, and the police in our town, they're not helpful." Thomas felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came whenever he met someone whose story echoed Noah and Owen's experience. "You're safe here," he said simply. "Let's get you and your daughter settled, and then we can figure out next steps." Over the next hour, Ashley conducted her initial assessment while Thomas coordinated with Jennifer Collins to prepare emergency housing. Lauren's story was heartbreakingly familiar. A mother who'd discovered her husband's criminal activities tried to report them and found herself targeted for elimination along with her daughter. But this time, the response was immediate and comprehensive. Within 2 hours, Lauren and her daughter were in secure housing with access to legal advocates, trauma counselors, and a community of people who understood exactly what they'd been through. The contrast with Noah and Owen's desperate flight through mountain snow couldn't have been starker. That evening, Thomas and Ashley sat on the porch of their home, watching Noah and Owen play in the backyard with their dog, a golden retriever named Elizabeth that they'd adopted on the first anniversary of coming to Cedar Falls. The mountains rose around them like protective walls, and the lights of the town twinkled in the gathering dusk. "Do you ever think about that night?" Ashley asked quietly. "About how different everything could have been if you'd made different choices?" Thomas considered the question. "Sometimes, but mostly I think about how many lives we've been able to touch because I heard 2 little boys crying in a storm. The numbers were staggering when he really considered them. The Cedar Falls Sanctuary alone had served over 300 families in 2 years. The 43 satellite programs had helped thousands more. The documentary about their story had inspired legislation in 6 states. Federal funding for community-based victim services had increased by 400%. Largely due to the evidence their program had provided about its effectiveness. "Elizabeth would be so proud," Ashley said, reaching for Thomas's hand, "not just of how Noah and Owen have thrived, but of what her sacrifice made possible." From the backyard came the sound of the boys' laughter as they played with the dog. Normal sounds, happy sounds, the kind of carefreeness that had seemed impossible during those first terrifying days. "Mr. Thomas, Miss Ashley," Owen called out. "Come see what Noah taught Elizabeth to do." They found Noah patiently working with the dog, who was learning to balance a treat on her nose. "Just like Mama used to do with us," he explained. She said, "Patience and practice can teach anyone anything." Thomas knelt down beside his sons, and they were his sons, officially adopted and legally sealed with all the love and protection he could provide. "Your mama was very wise." "She still is," Owen said matter-of-factly. "She talks to us sometimes when we're helping other kids. Not with words, but we can feel her being proud." As they headed inside for dinner, Thomas's phone buzzed with a text. From Zara, "Dad saw the news about the Sanctuary program being approved for national expansion. I'm so proud of you and Ashley. Can't wait to be home for the celebration next week. Love you all." The national expansion Sarah was referring to represented the culmination of 2 years of advocacy work. The federal government had officially adopted the Cedar Falls model as a pilot program for rural victim services, with plans to establish sanctuary communities in every state over the next 5 years. During dinner, Noah and Owen chatted about their plans to help train volunteers for the new programs, talking about teaching other kids the songs their mother had used to encode vital information and sharing the strategies they'd developed for helping traumatized youngsters feel safe. After the boys were in bed, Thomas and Ashley sat in their living room surrounded by photos that told the story of their transformed lives. Their wedding picture, the boys' adoption ceremony, Sarah's high school graduation, group photos from sanctuary celebrations, awards and recognitions from organizations they'd never imagined knowing. But the photo that meant the most to Thomas was a simple snapshot Jennifer had taken during their first month of operation. Thomas and Ashley working side by side, while Noah and Owen helped a frightened little girl color a picture of a house with the sun shining overhead. "Ashley," Thomas said, pulling her close on the couch, "do you remember what you said that first night, about lighting a signal fire that would be bright enough to call for help?" She smiled, settling against his shoulder. "We lit it, didn't we? Lit it. And now it's spread to 43 communities and counting." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the mountain wind and the distant sounds of a town that had become a beacon for vulnerable families across the country. Somewhere, out there, other communities were developing their own sanctuary programs. Other families were finding safety and healing. Other children were learning that they were worth fighting for. It had all started with two little boys crying in a storm, and one man who chose to listen instead of walking away. But it had become something that even Elizabeth Thompson, in all her careful planning, could never have imagined. A movement that was changing how society protected its most vulnerable members. Thomas Wright had once been a struggling mechanic who could barely keep his garage open. Now he was the co-founder of a program that was literally saving lives across the nation. Ashley had once been a small-town doctor working in isolation. Now she was a nationally recognized expert on trauma-informed community care. Noah and Owen had once been terrified refugees running from killers. Now they were confident, compassionate young boys who spent their time helping other scared kids learn to feel safe again. And Cedar Falls had transformed from a dying mountain town into a model of what communities could accomplish when they decided that caring for vulnerable people was everyone's responsibility. As Thomas turned off the lights and headed upstairs to check on the boys one last time, he found them both sound asleep. Noah's arm thrown protectively over Owen's shoulder, just like that first night in the garage. But their faces were peaceful now, unmarked by the fear and trauma that had defined their early lives. On Owen's nightstand sat a small, framed photo of Elizabeth Thompson. Not the haunted woman from the news reports, but a smiling mother holding her infant sons, her face radiant with love and hope for their future. "Thank you," Thomas whispered to the photo, "for trusting us with them, for showing us what courage looks like, for teaching us that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the world." Outside, snow was beginning to fall. Gentle flakes that painted the world in quiet beauty instead of the deadly storm that had brought Noah and Owen into their lives. This snow spoke of peace, of safety, of a community that had learned to shelter the vulnerable instead of turning away from their cries. The legacy Elizabeth Thompson had created was secure, growing stronger every day, touching lives she would never know, but had somehow managed to save through the courage of her sacrifice and the kindness of strangers who had refused to remain strangers. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.